Hello and welcome to the Motoring News Zone, the show where we take you through all the biggest stories in the world of cars right now. This week we take a look at why used car prices have stabilised as we start 2025, we react to New York City's controversial congestion charge, and we also take a look at why car insurance in the United Kingdom is so expensive and continues to rise. All that and a whole lot more is coming up in today's show. Let's dive in. So, I saw this the other day where it turns out that New York City in the United States is the first US city to have a congestion charge, something that we've had here in the UK in London for over 20 years now, and something that's being rolled out in ever greater distance and kind of coverage across the UK. But this is the first time this has ever happened in the States, a country that is car mad, a country that is very much against public transport for the most part. I mean, the people aren't, but the people who make the decisions are. New York City being a bit of an exception really when it comes to that. They have a lot of public transport and it is apparently not the worst, not the best. I don't hear amazing glowing things about it, to be honest, but this has gone down about as well as a lead balloon, as you'd expect. But let's have a look at what's going on here, give my kind of take on it, because congestion charges and electric vehicles is something I spoke about a lot. It's something I've spoke about a lot here on this channel, and I actually did give a mention to this congestion charge in a conversation I had with my good friend Ed Bernardin a while ago. So we knew this was coming, but now we're getting some reaction to it from the people who live there. So let's have a look at what's going on. Shout out to the BBC for covering that. The first congestion charge scheme for vehicles in the US has come into effect in New York City. Car drivers will pay up to $9, around £7 per day, with varying rates for other vehicles. The system has been in operation since midnight on Sunday. Jano Lieber, the CEO for the Metropolitan Transit Authority MTA, told reporters. 400 lanes of traffic are now covered by more than 1,400 cameras, with more than 110 detection points and more than 800 signs, he said. President-elect Donald Trump is among those resisting the scheme, but Mr. Labour said that he was confident agreements with the government would stand up to the changes of administration. The congestion zone covers areas south of Central Park, taking in such well-known sites as the Empire State Building, Times Square, and the financial district around Wall Street. The scheme aims to ease New York City's notorious traffic problems and raise billions for the public transportation network. New York State Governor Kathy Hochul made the case for the congestion charge 2 years ago, but it was delayed and revised following complaints from some commuters and businesses. The plan to revives one scheme that she paused in June, saying that there was too many unintended consequences for New Yorkers. Most drivers will be charged $9 once per day to enter the congestion charge at peak hours, and $2.25 at other times. Small trucks and non-commuter buses will pay $14.40 to enter Manhattan at peak times, while larger trucks and tourist buses will pay $21.60. Hours after the scheme began, traffic was moving briskly along the northern edge of the congestion zone at 60th Street and 2nd Avenue, the Associated Press reports. Many motorists seemed unaware that they had the newly activated cameras set along the arm of a steel gantry above the street, and they would soon send a new charge to their easy passes, it says. I'm guessing that's their equivalent of the Oyster card that I think is still around in London. I think they're on about getting rid of it, but I think you can still use an Oyster card in London. Basically just a pass to be able to use public transport. The charge has encountered plenty of opposition, though. Are you kidding me? New Jersey estate agent Chris Smith asked, speaking to AP. Whose idea was this? Kathy Hochul? She should be arrested for being ignorant. Seems like a reasonable man. The most high-profile opposition has come in the form of Trump, a native New Yorker who has vowed to kill the scheme when he returns to office this month. Local Republicans have already asked him to intervene. Congressman Mike Lawler, who represents a suburban district just north of New York City, asked Trump in November to commit ending this absurd congestion pricing cash grab once and for all. A judge denied an 11th hour effort on Friday by New Jersey state officials to block the scheme on grounds of its environmental impact on adjoining areas. I wonder what the environmental impact of a congestion charge would be. That's an interesting one. You think it'd help, but maybe not entirely. Need to see some evidence for that. Last year, New York City was named the world's most congested urban area for the second year in a row, according to INRX, a traffic data analysis firm. Vehicles in downtown Manhattan drove at speeds of 11 miles per hour during peak morning periods in the first quarter of last year, the report said. That's probably quick compared to London, to be honest, but maybe not. Among those welcoming the new scheme was Phil Bauer, a surgeon who lives in Midtown Manhattan. I think the idea would be good to try and minimise the amount of traffic down and try and promote people using public transportation, he told AP. Right, so let's just open this up. I'm not American, you guys know that. I'm from the UK. I've had limited experience when it comes to these congestion charges. You know, I've not been to London that much. I never drove in London, so I never had to kind of navigate it like that. I hear mixed things when it comes to this. If the aim is genuinely to try and reduce the traffic in New York, the proof will have to be in the pudding when it comes to this, as long as it keeps on. You know, if Trump does what he says and he gets rid of it, then we'll never know. Personally, I would be surprised if he does that, but then again, this is Donald Trump. He's not exactly predictable or level-headed, really, when it comes to a lot of his decision making, and that also goes for a lot of people in his party too. But without getting into too much US politics, because I don't feel that's my place at the end of the day, and this is also the Motoring Chronicle, not the Political Chronicle, you know, basically I'll just use London as the example here, because I feel like that is the most comparable thing. You know, London and New York, there's a lot of similarities there, especially when it comes to traffic and congestion charging now. London has had the congestion charge for just over 20 years. I think it came in 2003, and it's been through some changes in the last few years with the ultra low emission zones and stuff like that. But when it was initially put in back in 2003, there were a lot of concerns. There were a lot of people complaining about it, saying that it's going to kill London. London's going to die because of this, and that didn't happen. London now is doing far better than what it was 20 years ago in some regards. In some regards, not, but that's a problem for the UK as a whole, really. But what happened was that the traffic numbers, the congestion did ease. It did help initially. But since then, it's gone back up to what it was before. London is still a very congested and polluted city. When I have been down there and I come back up north again, and, you know, and I take that breath of fresh air when I get back up north again, it's like, whoa, wow, I've been breathing in a load of rubbish this whole time, you know, while I've been down there. So, you know, it's, in the long term, it's not made a difference, really. I mean, there is an argument to say that if they didn't put it in, then the traffic would be even higher than what it is now. And possibly not. I don't know. In terms of the public transportation, if they use it in the right way, if they actually do fund it like they say they're going to fund it, then that's great. That can only be a good thing. Now, I don't know what the public transport in New York is like. I know it, in terms of ridership and stuff like that, it's the highest city in the US in terms of percentage of people that commute via public transport, whether it's a subway, bus, whatever, right? It's something like 60% of people in New York commute by public transport. Now, there is the whole argument that, well, they're basically charging us to use, you know, to drive into the centre, and it shouldn't be like that. We should have the freedom to be able to do that. And that's a massive thing in America, good old freedom, of course. But, and I get that. I do get that. But you got to think about the damage that all them cars are doing to New York as a whole. And we'll have to see. If it works, it's great. And, you know, the traffic numbers go down, the city gets less polluted, that's fantastic. But what they need to ensure, and again, without being someone who's, you know, we've been someone who's never been to New York before, does New York have the capacity to be able to take on millions of more commuters via public transport rather than using the roads? And as someone who doesn't live there and never been there, I can't say. I would have to lean on someone who has been there or not. It's all well and good clearing the roads of cars, which is great. That's what you want. You know, one bus can effectively take 20, 30 cars off the road. So in terms of traffic, it is far better. But you have to make sure you have the capacity and you have the resources to be able to take on those extra public transportation people, those commuters via public transport. And whether New York has got that, I don't know. Without doing extensive research on it and asking people on the ground, I don't know. But I would hazard a guess at saying it's going to be even more of a stretch, isn't it? Because, you know, again, London is another example. You know, the tube, the underground, the subway, whatever you want to call it, for, you know, the New York equivalent, it's rammed. It's absolutely rammed all the time, even at like non-peak hours. So you're going to have to make sure you have enough trains and buses and everything else to be able to take that. And do they have that immediately? I don't know. Maybe you guys can tell me. But let us know your thoughts on it in the comments below, guys, because there are a lot of negatives here. And one thing I will touch on is that it does, in some sense, it does hurt local businesses if they're not able to invest in electric vehicles, for example. Or I don't even know if EVs are exempt from this, actually. The article didn't say. I would hazard a guess it probably no, because it's a congestion charge rather than an emissions charge, which is a different thing. So then you've got people for example, having to pay $20 every time they bring their van in to restock their shelves in their shop, or anything like that where they can't afford electric vehicles, or there's not the infrastructure there in New York. Because again, I don't know what the infrastructure is like in New York. I can imagine it's one of the best places to have an EV, but how good is it? If it's anything like the UK, probably not great, but we'll have to see. So, inflation. It's a bane very much of people's lives right now when it comes to the cost of living crisis, but something that is not particularly going to increase in the coming months as we start 2025 is the price of cars, or at least some used cars. But let's have a look at the full stats, the full picture here on the motoringchronicle.com, guys. Full article as always. The average price of a used car in December was £16,649, down 0.6% month on month versus November on a like-for-like basis, according to the latest data from Auto Trader, which assesses over 800,000 daily pricing observations from across the whole retail market. In 2023, prices decreased 2.3% from November to December, mainly due to a drop in trade valuations, which led to an impact on pricing, meaning prices were out of sync with what should be normally a strong market of this time of year. This year's price movements are more in line with seasonal norms, highlighting the more robust market dynamics in 2024. Additionally, while the year-on-year pricing was down 4.1% in December, that decrease is the smallest year-on-year drop seen through 2024, a positive trend as we enter 2025. This also marks the sixth consecutive month where year-on-year price drops have reduced. The peak was in June 24 with a 10% year-on-year price drop. The December figures show the average price of a used petrol car is down 3.2% year-on-year at £14,782. Diesels are down 4.1% to £14,087, and electric vehicles priced 10.6% lower at £26,139. The declines in prices of younger cars is mainly impacting the movement of prices overall, as there are pockets of strength for some cohorts of vehicles that have strong demand but shorter supply. In December, cars sold 3 days quicker than 2023, taking 33 days to leave forecourts, down from 36 the year prior, as robust demand tempers seasonal trends. December's speed of sale has also been longer in recent years, 36 days in 2022 and 34 in 21, marking 2024 as the quickest ever in this regard. This highlights that consumer demand is strong and pricing is driving the increased speed of sale, albeit at the expense of some margin of opportunity. EVs continue to be the fastest selling fuel type at 28 days, with 3 to 5 year old EVs selling within 24 days on average. Overall, we expect the used EV market to remain robust into 2025, with supply still growing strongly, but demand keeping pace in most vehicle age cohorts. Diesel were the next fastest fuel type at 32 days, driven by supply constraints, closely followed by petrol at just 1 day more with 33. While both the speed of sale and the volume of site visits to Auto Trader improved year on year, the market softened towards the back end of December. Younger vehicles have seen a big growth in demand. However, there has also been a very strong growth in supply, so there are pockets of opportunity there. More 1 to 3 year old cars are now being stocked by retailers as we come out of the pandemic, providing many with a good opportunity to get their hands on the latest vehicles compared to a year ago. In addition to this, Auto Trader's data also shows that there is lower demand for ICE vehicles, so that's basically petrol and diesel, but supply is heavily constrained in this age cohort, so there is an opportunity to make a strong profit for those that can source those vehicles. I believe hybrids are included with petrol and diesel depending on what type of engine it has on the ICE side, so if you're wondering why that's not in there, that is why. December saw both fast speed of sale and resilient volume of site visits to Auto Trader. As a result, the data shows a profit of opportunity of almost £30 million on underpriced stock that is highly sought after compared to an average of the market value. The 2025 outlook is also positive, as Auto Trader's forecasting, which was published last year, show the used car market is expected to maintain the strong growth and momentum of the last 2 years and rise to an estimated 7.61 million sales this year to around 7.7 million in 2025. And then there's a quote there from someone from Auto Trader. Like I said, full article on the motoringchronicle.com if you want to see more from that, guys. But I guess that's a good thing for consumers. I mean, everything goes up in price. Used car valuations have been extremely high for a long time, and it's kind of good that it's stagnating. That should help drive the growth, you would imagine, in that, or at least drive enough sales to maintain what is currently going on. So yeah, just some interesting insights into the market as we close out 24 and we begin 2025. A bright new future for us all, I hope. So having a car in the UK is not cheap, not only when it comes to actually buying a car, the running costs for it, but most importantly these days for younger drivers in particular, the insurance. I've heard so many horror stories when it comes to getting your car insured, and while I went for a relatively safe and cheap option, I would not consider it particularly cheap to insure it. It's not that uncommon for people's cars to actually be several times the value in terms of the actual insurance compared to the value of the car. You might have a car that you might have paid $2,000 for, but to insure it for a year can cost $5,000 or $6,000. So what's going on, and why, on top of that as well, is car insurance going up? Last year in particular, I remember being very bad for this. My car insurance went up by, I think, nearly 20% compared to the previous year, 23 to 24. And in that time, no accidents. I still had my no claims bonus. The value of the car went down effectively. Why did the value of the insurance then go up? It's a bit of a mystery. But Auto Express has done a very good job of analysing all this. And I want to shout out these guys and read from this article today because I think it's really interesting. I think it sums up things very well in terms of why car insurance is so expensive in the United Kingdom and why it is continuing to increase, just like everything's going up. But car insurance is definitely one of the worst offenders when it comes to this. So shout out these guys. Let's go through this. Want to know why your car insurance premiums are spiraling out of control and what needs to be done about it? In this exclusive Auto Express deep dive into a now broken UK car insurance market, they uncover the multiple points of failure. Below, they identify the 5 easy steps needed to address this car insurance crisis and put some affordability back into the market. Car insurance is facing an array of new challenges ranging from rampant recent inflation to almost uninsurable electric cars exported by Chinese manufacturers with insufficient spare parts, backup, and a lack of critical repair information, which all has a lot knock-on in terms of the other cars. Even if your car's a relatively safe and well-known brand like a BMW or a Mercedes, people going for other brands that are relatively unknown such as BYD, that unfortunately has a knock-on effect in terms of your insurance because if it's more expensive for the insurance companies, they're going to get their money back somehow and they will probably try and get it from you. That's just how it works. That's business, and I'm not going to get into the whole is this insurance a scam thing because that's a topic for another day, I think. But if you throw in hefty increases to the retail price of new cars, similarly high prices for the used market, and ongoing part shortages around the world, which, yes, still going on all these years later, the knock-on effect of that has been huge. It's getting better very slowly, but I don't even know if it'll ever get back to what it was before the pandemic. And they all drive the premiums for the roof. And just so you know, the premiums are basically the amount that you pay per year to insure your car. That's before we get to seemingly rampant levels of car theft, which, judging by your feedback, is routinely threatened as a no victim insurance issue by police forces who inexplicably unfocus the problem. Meanwhile, insurance underwriters are grappling with hard to access new risks associated with potential collateral damage to other cars and infrastructure from EV fires and the cost of mitigating new risks after accidents. Yes, EVs are changing the world of insurance when it comes to cars, and not in a particularly great way, in all honesty. So why has car insurance more than doubled? The upshot of all of this is that motor insurance premiums are rising, even on the cheapest cars to insure. They were 25% more expensive in 2023, following a 50% hike the year before, yet insurers still claim to be spending more on claims and costs than they're raking in via premiums. The Association of British Insurers, ABI, says that payouts rose by 21% in the final quarter of 2023 compared to a year earlier, and for every £1 collected in premiums, £1.11 was paid out. In total, £2.5 billion was paid out, with rising premiums driven by increasing costs of repair, materials, labour and second-hand cars, as well as very expensive claims for personal injury and serious accidents. None of these issues are the fault of repair industry or insurers, or are they? Is it fair that we all shoulder rocketing insurance premiums, even if, as it is true for the vast majority of drivers, we're still going around in ordinary, moderately priced cars with traditional petrol and diesel engines? Some may think the underwriters should focus more intently on the new risks and challenges and quote much higher premiums or withdraw cover where appropriate, instead of hiking prices for drivers whose habits haven't changed. Others think that the insurers should be absorbing more of the inflammatory rises, as other businesses have been forced to do when their customers aren't required to purchase their products by the law. That's the thing with car insurance in the UK. It's the law. You can't drive a car around legally. It's not like, oh, I'll just take the risk and not insure this. You have to have insurance. It is the law, which I think overall is probably a good thing. How annoyed would you be if you got hit by an uninsured driver, which does happen, of course. Still, people do drive cars that are uninsured, but that is, of course, illegal. That is breaking the law. I think in America you don't have to insure your car, but I could be wrong with that. It could be a state by state thing. American viewers, let us know if I'm wrong on that one. But yeah, well, what has to be done to return to sanity, normality, bring down those soaring premiums? Well, the insurance industry funded research and technical centre at Thatcham has identified a key role in trying to solve the many issues of the new challenges. According to the head of automotive, Ben Townsend, Thatcham is on the side of wanting to establish and properly function the insurance market. That starts with great cars being produced and finishes with cars that are able to be maintained sustainably throughout a body shop and repair network that appropriately prices insurance, he says. That's a luxury we've previously enjoyed thanks to an established and stable market. We've had steel or aluminium bodied cars, internal combustion engines, and the same layout for the best part of 100 years. Now, normal could mean anything from carbon monocoque to a £15,000 Far Eastern electric car with a sodium battery, he said, writing the car off because the labour cost makes it unviable. It's clear that a fast learning curve is required, yet with countless new EV brands springing up in China, India and even Vietnam, all hoping to profit from European sales, the prospect of a quick fix seems distant, especially as the issues are not limited to new brands you may have barely heard of, and affect established brands too. We've heard reports that basic information such as wheel alignment measurements can be hard to find for MG models, which I think traditionally MG were a British car manufacturer, but nowadays are owned by the Chinese. And the brand has suffered parts shortages as well on top of that. There's a quote there from MG in particular. I'm just going to skip past some of that there and just get to the car batteries because, again, EVs are a reason why. They're not the only reason why, don't get me wrong, but the EVs are actually having a knock-on effect in terms of the insurance market when it comes to their batteries. So batteries are powering an EV revolution, but insurers and repairers are struggling to keep up. There's almost no data on how much damage packs can withstand before becoming more vulnerable to fault or fires, and no established repair chain to assess and or fix damaged batteries. This means insurers are in the dark whether to when assessing and pricing the risk. The result, they add a bit on every premium and we all suffer. Now, this is where things get a little hazy for me personally. My personal opinion on this when it comes to should we all bear the cost of these EV batteries? No, I don't think we should. I think that's really unfair personally. I think it should be everybody's choice. I think it's unfair enough that, people, when it comes to road tax and stuff like that, they have to pay extra effectively when they've got a car that produces greenhouse gases. And I understand the thinking behind that. I do get that. But I do feel like that is a bit unfair in a sense compared to EVs that don't have to pay that. It's not particularly large, and I think that EV cars do have to pay it soon. I think from March this year. I remember seeing that somewhere in terms of the congestion charge and things like London. They'll have to pay that too eventually as well, because that's a congestion charge rather than a pollution charge is the difference. But, I do think that's a bit unfair. I don't think the average Tom, Dick and Harry is, I've seen a few posts basically going over it, just saying, why do we have to actually all go and pay for this? I feel that's unfair. And I agree, if people are wanting to take on the risk of having an EV, because there are risks associated with it, not just on a day-to-day basis, but in terms of the historical data when it comes to repairing it, like this, for example, I feel like that should be a risk that is taken on by the people that are actually doing it, actually have those cars, rather than people who have petrol or diesel powered cars or hybrids for that matter. I feel like that's unfair that everybody else is having to bear the brunt of that cost. So, I feel like the insurance company should raise it for the people who have got these EVs. And I understand it from their point of view, because if they repair a car, if they get a car that is repaired, in terms of the actual people doing the repair rather than the insurance themselves, but if the mechanics are then saying, well, we think this will be enough, we're sure this will be enough, but in terms of actually doing something less, it might be risky. And then what happens if it fails? That's going to be a massive that's going to be a huge financial hit, potentially costing somebody, an injury or permanent damage or maybe even death. You don't even know. I mean, some of these fires with this are very, very severe. So I totally get why they're not wanting to take a risk for that. But charging everybody else for it, no, I don't think that's fair. I feel that is so unfair personally. All an insurer can do is underwrite the risk it sees. If it can't understand the risk, it has to price that risk appropriately. So if somebody says, here's a £35,000 battery, but if the airbags deploy, we can't tell if the battery is safe or not, then the insurer has no choice. An accident that deploys the airbags increases the risk of whether the car will be total loss. Makes sense. Makes sense from the insurance company point of view. But I don't think everybody should be bearing that cost. I think that's unfair. And the thing is, I get why they're so apprehensive about this. I mean, look at this paragraph here. Unfortunately, even the most minor damage to a battery casing is a problem potentially. And because car manufacturers themselves don't fully understand how damage affects their units, some won't guarantee them following even the smallest scrapes or dents. If the manufacturer can't guarantee it, then an insurer or body shop can't guarantee it. So they have to replace the battery. It makes sense from that point of view. And then, yeah, I mean, again, anybody who's been to a garage in the last couple of years will know there's a real shortage of people coming through to be able to repair these cars. If there's a very specialist thing like EVs as well, it's even more expensive. And then there's obviously the parts knock-on and stuff like that as well. I mean, I do implore that you guys go and read this full article because I think it's a really good one from Auto Express here. And on top of that as well, I'm going to do a separate video going over how to fix the UK car insurance industry. That'll be out next week. This video's gone on for a long, long time, but I'm going to do another video as well, just going over that too. So do check that out when it is out. It will be out on Monday, the 20th of January. If you're watching this on the day this one comes out, I'm going to post this straight away on Friday. But yeah, for much more content on the world of motoring, do keep it tuned here to themotoringchronicle.com, guys. I want to hear your stories when it comes to insurance, when it comes to car insurance. What horror stories have you got? I want to hear them because I've heard a lot of them personally. And do you think it's fair that everybody else has to pony up effectively for the cost of repairing EVs, for the cost of making EVs safe for those drivers? I think that's very unfair personally. But I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below, guys. Like, share, comment, subscribe, ring the bell as well, and we'll see you very soon, guys. Have a good one.